truth of God to document His words.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
I love flowers. I'd love to have the whole place swimming in roses. God of heaven, there's nothing like nature. Wild mountains, then the sea, and the waves rushing, then the beautiful country with fields of oats and wheat and all kinds of things, and all the fine cattle going about. What would you do? All the fine cattle going about, that would do your heart good. To see rivers, and lakes, and flowers, all sorts of shapes and smells and colors springing up even out of the ditches, primroses and violets. Nature it is. As for them saying there's no God, I wouldn't give a snap of my 2 fingers for all their learning. Why don't they go and create something? I often ask him, atheists, or whatever they call themselves. Go and wash the cobbles off themselves first. Then they go howling for the priest, and they dying. And why? Why? Because they're afraid of hell on account of their bad conscience. Ah, yes, I know them well. Who was the first person in the universe before there was anybody that made it all? Who? Ah, that they don't know. Neither do I, so there you are. Might as well try to stop the sun from rising tomorrow. The sun shines for you, he said, the day we were lying among the rhododendrons on Howarth Head in the gray tweed suit and his straw hat, the day I got him to propose to me. Yes, first I gave him the bit of seed cake out of my mouth, and it was leap year like now, yes, 16 years ago, my God, after that long kiss, I nearly lost my breath. Yes, he said, that was a flower of the mountain. Yes, so we are flowers, all a woman's body. Yes, that was one true thing he said in his life. And the sun shines for you today. Yes. Did you recognize that? That's Molly Bloom's soliloquy, a little tiny sliver of it. You recognized it, yeah. From James Joyce's Ulysses. One of the greatest passages in all of literature. I'm not sure, but I think that passage goes on for about 20 pages or so, or more. One long sentence without punctuation that goes on for about 20 pages. In the whole book, we've heard all about Molly Bloom, and at the end of the book, she speaks. And the book ends with her speech, and the last word of the book is yes. And I'm reading that for you today because it's Bloomsday, June the 16th. I think once or twice before we had Bloomsday during the session. I also read something from James Joyce, Ulysses. June 16th, 1904 is the day that all the action in Ulysses takes place. Can you hear okay? Does the sound all right? That's better? Okay, sorry. Kathy is complaining to me that I'm getting old and my voice is falling away. I'm yakking on and everybody's smiling nicely. A little bit further, okay. I always say it doesn't really matter if you can hear what I say, so I don't mind if you don't hear. Probably you don't mind either. Doesn't matter. You're just doing zazen. Where was I? Yes, so that's the day, June 16th, 1904, is the day that all the action in Ulysses takes place. All 600 or 700 pages of the novel are all about this one day, June the 16th, 1904. And it's all based on Joyce's own life as a young man in Dublin And it begins with a scene that takes place at the top of the Martello Tower. Yeah, which is an old, you know, it's an old abandoned battlement. I forget established in what war, but it was defunct. But somebody rehabilitated it around 1900 and was renting it out to poor college students. And Joyce lived in there for a short while with some of his fellow students. And Kathy and I were in Dublin in the fall. And somehow we managed to get a train out to visit the Martello Tower, which was a great thrill for me. The tower is located just above a small swimming beach where the water is really cold, but sturdy people go out and swim in it anyway. And it's pretty much the same, you know, a stone tower doesn't change much, right? So it's the same as it was pretty much in 1904, and there's a little museum on the bottom. On June 16th, 1904, Joyce met Noah Barnacle in a pub, and they had a date that day, and the date is described in Ulysses. And I think around a week later, they ran away together. And they lived together for the rest of Joyce's life, always outside of Ireland, and always without enough money to live on. So Kathy and I were in the Martello Tower, and we also managed, somehow we stumbled into the pub where they met. We were just on the street somewhere, and we were hungry. We went into a pub, and we found out that it was the pub where they met. The reason Joyce and Nora Barnacle always lived outside Ireland was that Joyce couldn't stand Ireland. He couldn't stand it there. The Catholic Church in which he grew up was all-pervasive, super repressive, corrupt, and absolutely the enemy of any kind of creative thought. And all the young people who were revolting against the church were Republicans who were equally in revolt against the repressive English rule. And so a lot of them were romantic revolutionaries. So Ireland was kind of like we are here today, full of politics. You could not go anywhere in Ireland and escape from politics or the church. So between the politics and the church, Joyce couldn't stand Ireland. He couldn't stand to be there for one more day, so they left and never came back. However, his whole life long, without ever living again in Ireland, the only thing he ever wrote about was Ireland, which I guess he loved as much as he hated. So my friend Catherine Rotzak, who is a dancer and a choreographer, is today on Bloomsday performing a piece in San Francisco, and she said, would you write a poem for my dance? And I said, sure. So this is my poem that she's reading today and dancing to or something on Bloomsday. It's about the Martello Tower. From there you see all round, round and round, like a mirror. Round and round like a circular swirl. The tower is circular. Down to the beach where the swimmers swim in the icy Irish sea that churns. Stay overnight and don't go away. Go away and don't come back. Don't pay the rent. Don't dream of a leopard. Make longing and remembering the source word. Make bitterness and running the juice, and lack of money the hard edge for the banter and the song and the drink. Ireland's not a pretty place. It's awash with its dour church, its joy-killing fathers, awash with poachers entranced with the rhetoric of independence. What independence was there ever? And what Ireland of the dreams of the Irish in their cold Yeatsian beds? As the river gods on the customs house know, the gods waterlogged in the Liffey, whose waters flow under the harp of the Samuel Beckett Bridge to the sea that washes it all away, but the words. So happy Bloomsday. Yesterday I was talking about Zhang's teaching, What Do You Call the World? How am I doing? Can you still hear me? All right, I guess I always have to talk like this. So then they're complaining, you're shouting. Why are you shouting during your Dharma talks? You can't win, right? That's life. It's either too cold or too hot. Too loud or not loud enough. Anyway, yesterday I was talking about Zhang's teaching, What Do You Call the World? And I was saying that, we really don't appreciate how big the world is and how imaginative the world really is. And we really don't appreciate how much we create the world with our words. For instance, you could ask, are Leopold and Molly Bloom real people? And the answer, of course, is no. They're not real people. Joyce made them up. But in the 100 years or so since Joyce made these people up, who never existed and don't now exist, there have been many millions of human beings born and died and totally forgotten and unknown to us now, as if they never lived. We don't know them, but we do know Leopold and Molly Bloom, and we have been moved by them and influenced by them. We know who they are. We've been thinking their thoughts. We've been hearing their voices. Maybe there are more kinds of real than we know. Maybe Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva is as real as Leopold and Molly Bloom, and has had as big, probably much more of an impact on the world than they have. Maybe there are more kinds of real than we credit. Maybe the poverty of our small reality is as much as anything the reason for our human suffering. This reminds me of a very famous Zen story. I know you've heard it before. Once, Tenshin went outside and got wet. Water was falling from the sky. It's raining, he said. But Shushan, who had his phone in his hand, with the weather app open, showed Tenshin that the icon indicated that it was actually full sun. Look, he said, pointing to the phone, it isn't raining. Shinzan came along and said, you're both wrong. It's raining and it's not raining. That's what the world is like. This is why we have to be very present and very ready all the time to appreciate conditions as they actually are. Because you never know which reality will appear from one moment to the next. And that's what all our Zen ancestors are always talking about. Well, I've been reading another book. This is a new book, not yet out, by Uchiyama Roshi. It's called The Sound That Perceives the World. And it's about Kanzeon Bosatsu Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, who, as it turns out, when you read the book, was very important for Uchiyama Roshi. And Tricycle asked me to write a review of this book, and that's why I've been reading this advanced copy. I don't know when it's going to be published, but you can't get it yet, but it'll be out sometime. And in the book, Uchiyama Roshi tells the story of how he encountered Kanzeon Bosatsu. It was during the war that we refer to as World War II, In our reality, it's World War II. In Japanese reality, it's not World War II, it's the Pacific War. Things were really, really rough in Japan then. There was no money, very little food, and people were scuffling to survive. Uchiyama Roshi at that time was living in a little temple with 2 other monks, and the 3 of them were determined to keep sitting zazen and living in this little temple no matter what. But the government came in and took over the temple because they wanted it to house, I think, orphans or something. So Uchiyama Roshi and his 2 companions had to leave, and they had an offer to work far away in the deep mountains, cutting wood and baking it into charcoal to feed the many hibachis that heated traditional Japanese homes. So they were happy that they had a place to go and that they had work, and they were young and they were really up for an adventure, and they thought, wow, this will be really cool, because they were city boys and they'd never lived in the country. They thought it would really be fun. But it turned out to be far more of an ordeal than an adventure. There was very little food to eat. There's wood to make charcoal, but not enough wood to make much heat. So they were cold all the time. There was lots of snow, and they were lugging really heavy equipment around on steep, narrow mountain paths to cut trees and pieces of trees and lug them back to the hut where they had to cut them into chunks and cook them in the charcoal making furnace. And they didn't have good gloves, so in the daytime their hands were freezing, and in the late day and evening their hands were burned and blistered from pulling the wood, the charcoal pieces out from the furnace. And I'm not telling you the gruesome details that Uchiyama mentions in his book. So one day, in the midst of all these struggles and all of his despair, he just felt, that's it, I can't do this another day. He felt like he would rather die than endure one more day of this horrible struggle. He was at his wit's end. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, he found himself chanting, Namo Kanzeon Bosatsu, Namo Kanzeon Bosatsu, Namo Kanzeon Bosatsu, Namo Kanzeon Bosatsu, over and over and over again. And Kanzeon Bosatsu filled his whole body and mind, and all the thoughts of suffering and misery disappeared, and he felt happy and lighthearted, and he was able to continue his work, and he survived. Now, the funny thing about this is that Uchiyama Roshi was not a pious or religious kind of a person. He was very practical and quite rational, to a fault almost, and really, really gruff. Not that he was unsympathetic to people, but basically he really felt as if 99.9% of people's problems were due to their own stupid thinking. And he just did not want to indulge anybody's stupid thinking. He thought it was bad for them, and certainly he didn't have time for it. And as a Soto Zen priest, he came from a rather unconventional lineage that rejected the religiosity of ordinary Soto Zen and emphasized zazen and zazen only. They famously didn't even have Dharma talks. They just had zazen. They thought Dharma talks were a distraction from zazen. His teacher, Sawaki Kodo Roshi, was known as Homeless Kodo because he refused to take on a temple with all of its donors and members and different committees and memorial ceremonies and funerals. He thought that has nothing to do with Buddhist practice, forget it. Uchiyama Roshi thought that most of religion and most of Zen was utter nonsense. that offering incense, bowing to statues was the height of foolishness and a total waste of time, which he said frequently. In addition, he thought that enlightenment was also stupid. It was also a waste of time and a fairy tale, a kind of Disney movie or a psychedelic indulgence. His practice was zazen, 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 and every moment awakening, moment after moment after moment. Constant practice all the time. So he was a kind of radical Zen, tough guy, which makes it even more amazing that he had this experience of finding himself suddenly, without even intending it, chanting Kanzeon Bosatsu over and over again, and being relieved of all of his suffering by Kanzeon Bosatsu. Probably most of you know that the tradition of calling on Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva in times of trouble comes from the famous 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, which is a long chapter, sometimes extracted from the Lotus Sutra and presented as an independent sutra, the Kannon Sutra. And the sutra begins with a question from another bodhisattva, the bodhisattva Inexhaustible Intent, who asks the Buddha, why did Kannon, Kanzeon, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva get her name, hearer of the world's cries, perceiver of the world's sounds? And the Buddha replies, suppose there are immeasurable hundreds, thousands, 10,000 millions of living beings who are undergoing various trials and suffering. If they hear of this bodhisattva, perceiver of the world's sounds, and wholeheartedly call her name, then at once they will perceive the sound of their voices, that is, Kannon will perceive the sound of their voices, and they will all gain deliverance from their trials. That's why she is called Kanzeon, perceiver of the world's sounds. Then, page after page, the sutra goes on to enumerate in detail the various disastrous situations that might occur, and a person calls out to Kanzeon and is delivered from their troubles. It says, right after the part I quoted, it says, if a person who upholds the name of Kanzeon Bosatsu enters a great fire, the fire will not burn him, all because of this bodhisattva's awesome spiritual power. If a person being tossed about in the great sea calls out the bodhisattva's name, he will find a shallow place. If the hundreds of thousands of myriads of kotis of beings who seek gold, silver, lapis lazuli, mother of pearl, carnelian, coral, amber pearls, and so forth, enter the great sea, an evil wind may toss their boats into the territory of the Raksha ghosts. But if among them there is even one person who calls out the name of Kanzeon Bosatsu, they will all be saved from the difficulty of the Rakshas. For this reason, she is called Kanzeon. And this last one reminds me of the famous story of Dogen coming home from China by boat. And the boat encountered, great storms and perils, and they all thought they would die, but Dogen called out to Kanzeon Bosatsu, and they were saved. That's why we're here now. Now, it wasn't because he believed in any of this that Uchiyama Roshi started chanting the Kanzeon name. It was because, as he explains, he had had a lot of conditioning as a child that had to do with Kanzeon. His grandfather didn't like the Pure Land temple down the block As you know, the Pure Land tradition is to chant the name not of Kanzeon, but of Amida Buddha. You chant the name of Amida Buddha and you pray to be born in Amida's paradise, where you can actually practice, because you cannot practice in this world. It's far too hard. So you chant the name of Amida to be reborn there, and then you can start practice. Well, Uchiyama Roshi's grandfather didn't like that. So for spite, maybe, he built a little temple to Kanzeon down the street from this Pure Land temple. That temple, as so many temples did, and maybe still do in Japan, burned down because they're made out of wood with thatched roofs, and they burn candles, so they're almost guaranteed to burn down. They usually have a replacement temple in somebody's shop, for the eventuality. So those of you starting a new center, beware. Sprinkler systems are required. Have them. Actually, the house that I was a child in burned down because in America, although it wasn't Japan, houses did burn down quite a lot, but not anymore because we have safety regulations and sprinkler systems. Anyway, that temple burned down, but the images were saved, some of them, and Uchiyama Roshi's mother inherited them, and she kept them enshrined in their house, and she prayed to Kanzeon Bosatsu every day and recited the Kannon chapter of the Lotus Sutra. So as a child, Uchiyama Roshi was very familiar with this, which I guess is why, in this moment, it came back to him. Maybe some of you know about Uchiyama Roshi. We think we have this projection, of Japanese Zen masters, but almost all the ones in the 20th century were not at all what we would expect. He was a pretty interesting guy, and his life was kind of surprising. He married quite young, but his wife died of tuberculosis in her early 20s. And he also was in his early 20s, and her death was a great spiritual crisis for him. He was and had been a university student, and his topic was Western philosophy. So he was a maven in all the Western philosophical tradition, which made him, very kind of anti-traditional Japanese stuff. But after her death, he went to work in a Catholic school, and he became interested in the Catholics, and he began considering seriously whether to become a Catholic priest. And he studied quite a bit toward this end, but decided in the end not to do that. Although he never gave up reading the Bible, he always loved reading the Bible and often referred to it in his Dharma talks. A few years later, he met Sawaka Kodo Roshi and ordained as a Zen priest. He married a second time, and a third time after his second wife died due to complications of childbirth. So he didn't have exactly such an easy time of it. And although he didn't get tuberculosis when his wife died, somehow he was affected by the illness, and it gave him bad health later in life. And by the time he was 61 or so, he was too ill to sit zazen, even though later he became avid of Entaiji. But he had to retire in 1975 because he couldn't do it. He wasn't strong enough. He had to spend a lot of his time in bed. And he lived until 1998. He wrote a lot of books. Only a few of them are translated into English. But his disciple, Shohaku Okamura, is one of our great American Dharma treasures. And his English writings on and translations of Dogen are very important to all of us. But he also had a very tough early life. Don't practice this hard Zen practice when you're young and you think you could do it, because then later on you'll be a wreck. Poor Shohaku doesn't have such good health, and he had to retire too. He's around my age. He probably, without that bad health, could have kept going, but he retired from the Sanshin community in Bloomington, Indiana. The best known teaching for Uchiyama Roshi and the teaching that he will always be remembered for is this phrase, opening the hand of thought, which I'm sure many of you have heard. What a great expression, opening the hand of thought. In one phrase, it's how we practice zazen, how we live all the time, and it expresses Dogen's fundamental and radical teaching that enlightenment is not some special state or special achievement, is very, very real, and is simply the ordinary mind and ordinary life slightly tweaked. A very small tweak, but one that makes all the difference. We are constantly living from the position of ourself. Of course we are. How else could we live? I am me, of course I am, and so I do this and that. I think this, I think that. I believe this, I believe that. I hope for this, I hope for that. I agree with this, I disagree with that, and so on. This is the closed hand of thought. I am here, you are there. I am here, the world is over there. A closed hand of thought is the most natural thing in the world. I close mine, you close yours. We live together, closed hand to closed hand. To practice is not to destroy thought, to make it go away so that we have some projected, peaceful, happy, enlightened, pure, peaceful mind, empty of any defilement. No, to practice is to open the hand of thought, to allow our thought, to allow our life to come and go freely. As human beings, of course, we will have thoughts and emotions and self-centered desires. According to Uchiyama Roshi, these things are like secretions from glands. They can't be helped. They're not supposed to be stopped. We need them to live. They will come and they will go. They're natural. They're beautiful. They're not a problem. Unless we close our hands on them. Then they're a problem. Then they cause us great suffering. But when we open the hand of thought and we allow everything and anything to be there and let it go, then we don't set ourselves apart. We simply join the flow of reality completely as it moves along, just like that seed at the bottom of the Martello Tower. In his book, Uchiyama Roshi talks about, I've only read a little bit of it, so I'll tell you more later sometime, but in the book he does talk about the idea that calling out to Kanzeon is exactly the same as opening the hand of thought. It's the same thing. Just as in zazen we allow thought to arise and disappear, and we do that by returning again and again to the body and the breathing, the same thing happens when we chant the name of Kanzeon, whether aloud or silently. Using that instead of the body and the breath, we open the hand of thought, letting go of our self-centered habit and allowing what is to be just what is. When we can do that, we're immediately freed from suffering. In the snowy mountains long ago, Uchiyama Roshi was freed from his troubled thoughts simply by filling his mind with thoughts of Kanzeon. It was still cold outside. His hands were still frozen and blistered. There was still some pain and unpleasantness. But since his mind was no longer obsessed and troubled by this, there was at the same time no pain and no suffering. Maybe you caught it that the title of Uchiyama Roshi's book is not Perceiver of the Sounds of the World. It's the sound that perceives the world. Also, when he translates the name of Kanzeon, he doesn't translate hearer of the sounds of the world. He translates as the one who sees the sounds of the world. And in both cases, he explains that he does this to make the point that the essence of Kanzeon Bosatsu and the essence of opening up the hand of thought is that, in a way, we stop perceiving altogether. Which means we stop being over here looking at something over there that is not ourself. We end that separation that is the fundamental characteristic of perception and thought. Actually, everything really is ourself and not ourself. Ourself is not ourself. There's no me over here and you over there. To say that Kanzeon hears the sounds of the world as if she were herself not the sounds of the world, and the world was not her, would be to fall again into the confusion and suffering whose essence is separation. When he says seize the sound, he means be the sound. When he says the sound hears the world, he means that the world is not the world as we take it, the world of objects in separate existences. And you can apply this thought very simply to your ordinary life. When you hear the sound of the robin singing, don't hear the robin. Hear yourself. Hear the whole world. And furthermore, when you hear the robin hears you. The robin is you. The robin is creating your life. And what about the other people over there? What about them? We look at other people and we're pretty convinced they're other people. And how do we see them? We see them entirely from our own side. How else do we see them, right? We see them entirely from our own side, and we think we're seeing them. We're seeing ourselves. Everything you think about the other person is about you. It's almost comical. And then we act on all this. And we do stuff with each other based on this idea. We see everyone that we ever meet entirely from our own side. And if they slight us or hurt us or upset us, we have feelings and ideas about this, and we project these feelings and ideas onto that other object out there, the other person, and we know who they are. But did you ever think that when you see the other person sees you? You are creating them, and they are creating you. The flow of their living and the flow of your living is one flow of of loving reality. That's probably why we are the way we are in this crazy world. So that we can awaken one another in our confusion. When we open the hand of thought, we don't see other as other or self as self. And right now, in this very moment, we can be saved from our suffering. So this could be a practice for Sesshin, literally. Sit there and call on Kanzeon to save you. Namo Kanzeon Bosatsu. Namo Kanzeon Bosatsu. Please save me, Kanzeon. If you find that you can't do zazen because it's too hard, then all your efforts to do it are a big failure. My advice to you is give up entirely. Just give up. Don't waste any more time failing at zazen. Just ask Kanzeon to save you. Sit there and breathe and sit up straight and ask for help. Kanzeon Bosatsu. Namo Kanzeon Bosatsu. Namo Kanzeon Bosatsu. Moment after moment. It'll probably work. Whatever working means. And if you think, well, but I'm not like Uchiyama Roshi. I didn't have that same early conditioning around Kanzeon, so, it'd be so foreign and weird to me. I couldn't do it, maybe for a minute, but it really wouldn't work for me because it's so foreign. Well, you could use your breath in exactly the same way. Because your breath is not Japanese, is it? Oh, it's not American either. But you've known it all your life from the beginning. It has been a comfort to you. Actually, your breath is Kanzeon Bosatsu. So breathe in and breathe out with that spirit. Please save me, breath. Please help me to endure this one more moment of zazen until the bell rings. And the breath will help you. It's been helping you the whole time. From the beginning, it's been helping you. And it will help you without fail all the way to the end. Because I practice zazen a lot, I'm very friendly with my breath. I really appreciate that I'm breathing. And it's a good friend to me. When I go to the dentist, and the dentist is about to pull out my wisdom tooth, or I'm thinking, save me, breath. Please help me. It's good. It's not so bad, If I have to go into some kind of medical procedure that's scary, I breathe, and it helps me. Anytime I'm in trouble, just like Uchiyama Roshi, I don't have to think about it. I don't make a thing about it. I just start breathing, and I start noticing my breathing. Maybe some of you do this too. What a gift to have faith in your breathing. Maybe that's what we're doing in zazen, making friends with our breathing. Letting our breathing become Kanzeon Bosatsu for us. Whatever is happening, no matter what it is, can be endured if you are alive and if you breathe. So there's nothing to fear. And this has been true all along, whether you know it or not. And it always will be true. And at the end, your beautiful exhale will take you wherever it is you need to be going. So, something to think about anyway. In case you don't have anything to think about. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
May our intentions equally extend to every